Hello and welcome to the first edition of Foster Guy Florida Golf Show. And he is Tom Shea. He is the Foster Guy Florida, and this is his golf show. Hello, Tom Shea. How are you?
Hello, JP. How are you?
It's great to see you in this this beautiful studio we have made just for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
We are brought to you by the Excite Junior Golf Tour. As you can see right above you, you still got hair. You got a lot more hair than I do, Tommy. We're both on the edge, but we're hanging on. We're hanging on for dear life. Hey, thank you for joining us here on this inaugural edition of the Golf Show, and we're excited that you're here. And we're going to be talking about foster care and golf, two things that don't typically go together, but in this case, Tom, do. And it starts with your story first and foremost.
Well, it really does, JP. And I'm sitting here thinking I'm getting more comfortable saying it. I'm really looking for the next me.
Yeah.
Okay. I was a foster kid at 8, adopted at 13, sent to the golf course at 12 to be a caddy. And be honest with you, I've been living in a fantasy world being in golf for the last 35 years.
Yeah.
But over the last 5 years, we've tried to, become more engaged with the foster care community in Florida. I'm originally from New Jersey. I've been trying to get my mom into the New Jersey Hall of Fame up there, just to honor her for what she did for not only as a foster parent, but as a parent. Coincidentally, it was 19 years ago today that my father actually passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday before Father's Day, 19 years ago. And but they saved my life, and they gave me the gift of golf. And now I'm looking to return that gift to foster care.
That's a great thing.
Florida.
It's a great thing. And I've known you for, over 25 years as one of the great golf teachers and personalities, as I would say, in this golf market. You turn up at just about every tournament. You're the person everybody talks about in the golf community. So I'm honored to be doing this with you, and honored to be sharing something that's so important to the community. And I think in our everyday lives, most of us don't think about foster care. But you have lived it, obviously, as a child, and now helping others go through this system. And it can be a system that's very rewarding. It can be a system that's very challenging. But I know it's important to you, and it should be important to everybody for a lot of different reasons. So first, let's start with your story. And it's interesting because I never knew you were a foster kid. I mean, it's not like something you walk around with on your forehead and go, hey, I've known you for, as I said, 25 years, but I've never known your story. So please.
Well, my real mother actually died here in Florida when I was 6, down in Margate, actually maybe a year part of the
absolutely,
country, for a lot of that area. My father was an abusive alcoholic, unfortunately. So I was put into foster care when I was 8. Actually, I'll never forget the date because it was 5 days before my 9th birthday. And then the Sheas, they took me in.
What's that like? The moment that you go into foster care?
Oh, JP, I was angry.
I can imagine.
And I can relate it to the kids that
pull that mic a little bit closer to you.
Sure.
If you could.
I was dealing with
that's good. Yeah.
The kids. I related to the kids 5 years ago when I was in the group home, and we'll talk about that a little bit more too. But I could relate to their anger because I did. I tried to run away. I knew every curse word. And it's funny because my wife talks about it a lot. But again, I found stability with the Shea family. It took a while, but it's really a trust thing, because you're like, hey, I've been thrown to the streets. I remember just to eat at JP, up in the Northeast, there's Acme stores. And I remember in Acme, basically trying to steal stuff just to survive. Of course, I get caught. I go home. My father beats me for it. So, it was a very trying time. And but I feel fortunate. I feel lucky. I mean, I came out of it.
Wow.
Not only did the Shea save my life, but I think golf saved my life because, again, I started as a caddy. Funny thing, I didn't like the game because it was so damn hard. You know that better than anybody. Yeah. It's so frustrating. But then a guy was shooting 110. I'm caddying for. He's like, oh, I'm good. I'm like, I can do that. And the rest is history. And it makes sense now. Like somebody said to me probably 10 years ago, I've gravitated to the kid stuff. That's really what I've done for the last 25 years. And people are like, oh, you're just like your mother. I said, I'm nowhere near my mother. My mother saved lives. I'm just saving golf swings. That's what I like to say. But it's really, giving the gift back that was given to me. And again, I was lucky. I survived. There's some, I'll admit there's been some demons that have surfaced over the last 5 years working with different kids. But once they know that I've been in their shoes, it's amazing how they open up. And that's my favorite part, because it's a trust thing. It really is.
So, So we talk about your story. Now let's talk about other stories of these kids that you can reach through golf. And you know this because, obviously you're looking for an outlet. You need something to take your time, not just school. When school ends, what do? And for you, it was golf, and you were caddying, and you're making money and you're learning the game, and it becomes a lifelong passion and a career. So for these kids today, you are living proof that, hey, you may not like golf right now, but it may be something that'll save your life, because it could become a career. It could be something that just keeps you out of trouble, right?
Well, and here's the end goal, JP. I'll use the group home as an example that I got involved with 5 years ago. A kid had been there for 3 years. Nobody asked him what he wanted to do. Kid wanted to be a policeman. Well, I know sheriffs. I knew policemen. I introduced him. He got involved with taking some classes at Hillsborough Community College. I mean, kind of the rest is history. But
so now he's become a cop?
He's on that path.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. So the amazing thing with golf is the people that play it. Hey, if somebody wants to get into broadcasting, who am I sending to? JP.
That's right.
If somebody wants to be an accountant, I'm sending them this guy. If somebody wants to be a lawyer, I'm sending this guy. There is someone connected to the game pretty much in any field that this kid may have an interest in.
Yeah.
And that's what excites me. Because I always laugh. People say to me, hey, this guy, how come you don't ask him for tickets? I'm not going to ask him for tickets. I'm going to ask him to be a mentor, or I'm going to ask him to explain his career path and whether it's worth it for this kid.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. And that's what amazed me. I always relate to the PGA. They just added another one. I don't even know what it is, but I've always joked that they've had 24 classifications. Now they have 25. You can be a journalist. You can be a superintendent. You can be a director of golf. You can be an instructor. A lot of avenues. And if you're not in the first 23, 24, you fall into the last one. So I don't know what that would be, but everything is covered. And so, again, there's so many avenues out there to connect to different people. And that's really what I'm looking to do. I laugh, my kids laugh at who I know because of the game.
Yeah.
How did I meet you? I met you through golf. How did I meet other people? 99% of the time it's through the game of golf. I laugh because I'm the worst at checking names or seeing names and stuff like that. But it's hey, once I do, I kind of laugh about it. But, but we've had some players, come out that play in our U.S. Kids Tour here in town. And just, again, through the game of golf and just being involved with different things, there's someone, a phone call.
What if I want to be an NFL football player?
There you go.
Do you know somebody who might be in?
We know somebody very highly.
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Hall of Fame, Rondé Barber. I've known Rondé as long as I've known you, and had his daughter out with me when I coached at Berkeley Prep. So, and then
you have Jason Light. His son is playing golf.
Light playing on our tour.
Yeah,
probably one of my favorites was. Had a kid on the Berkeley team where I coached, RJ Campbell.
Yeah.
Ron Campbell's son.
Yeah.
And I knew Ron before I knew RJ. So it's really funny how, and I didn't recognize that, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Maybe if I saw the name Peterson, I'd recognize, hey, that's JP.
Yeah. Campbell's a little bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just funny, but someone is connected to the game.
Right.
And there's some very, obviously some high, highly influential people that are connected to the game.
Yeah.
So
and then you can,
what I love about
you can pass on those mentorships to kids you meet in foster care.
Exactly.
Typically, what is it like for a foster kid? What is the process? I know what you went through, but for kids in Florida, what is the process? And I know a lot of times it takes a long time for them to find foster parents, right?
Well, it's typically a very sad situation. Most of them are removed because of some kind of abuse, or the parents are abusing themselves with drugs or things like that. They're placed either in a single family home, or a lot of times in a group home. And then there's a process for the parents. It's really up to the parents. And the sad part is a lot of parents don't care about their kids.
Yeah.
So they won't go through the process of trying to fix themselves to get their kids back. Then there's people that are amazingly on that path to correct it, to get their kids back. There's been some sad stories out there, and it's just really, I get where the kids, would be very angry, like we talked earlier. But the process is not a good one. And there are, there's a lot of good people out there, but there's not enough good people out there to take these kids in. a group I got involved with, the Guardian Ad Litems. They're advocates for the kids. They're court appointed. I've actually became one back in March, and that's been an eye opener because there's not enough volunteers for that organization. But the biggest thing is it's really the kids suffer because of what the parents have done, and that's the sad part.
Yeah.
It took me a long time. I mean, I'll admit that. When my real father passed away, I was very angry. I remember my mother was still alive, and I talked to her, but man, I was angry. I mean, it just enraged me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that. So you kind of channel it, you kind of push it down. You just kind of. I've always been the positive guy, which is funny, but because I have asked in the past, why me? So, and I'm sure a lot of these kids, hey, why did this happen to me? And the process is not a pretty one, unfortunately. So,
and once they get into a foster home, how do they get in your groups? You do a lot of parent-child foster care clinics, and you got a couple coming up.
Yes.
So
I got involved with the Florida Sheriff Youth Ranches, which are all over the state. That's involving the Florida sheriffs themselves. They actually have 3 group homes around the state, and then they have 3 camps around the state. So we're scheduled to go into each one of the camps and do a clinic. And just really, I'm just trying to share the game. I've got a lot of different toys. It doesn't even involve a golf club.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I drawing a blank on it? The cornhole. Cornhole. I'll use it not only for the bean bags, but I'll have them chip it to that.
Yeah.
I'll have a throw a ball to that. I use these whippy clubs. Tomorrow I've got camp. We'll do Whippy Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I'll use a lot of different toys just to show them, hey, this can be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it looks boring, and it is hard.
It can be hard.
Try it. Exactly. But it's really to get them introduced and tell them, hey, this could be a great avenue for you to expand, not only your interest in the game, but the people that have the interest in the game.
And, there's something that's kind of endemic to golf is the life lessons that are learned within the game.
Big time.
Obviously the rules of the game, being honest, respecting the game, hard work. There's a lot that goes into this game that kids learn. Tell me some stories about foster kids that you've worked with that have kind of maybe had bad attitudes or didn't have priorities in life, and they learned a lot through the game of golf.
Well, and just that's a great question, because I'm chuckling because there are some kids that were they were tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine.
And they had the walls up, and
it's not like Berkeley, right?
Exactly. And the layers are up, but I mean, whether it was just telling them that, because I always laughed. I would always be like, hey, I'm a coach. And they'd guess everything but golf.
Right.
But just being able to be out on the golf course, definitely, hey, if you miss a shot, that counts. I've really tried to push the kids to have an interest in caddying.
Yeah.
Just to be able to be on the golf course, relate to the game. I've got them playing a little bit, but it's really, just getting them out of the home. Is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And bringing them to a golf course. I mean,
get them off the video games.
One of the things we did a few years ago, which was pretty funny, and then I got in trouble for it, was I had the kids on the golf carts. Now I had them way out in the back 9 of the forest at the Eagles. No homes. No, the only thing they could hurt is maybe an animal or two.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, well, you know what? I would do it again, because again. I had them out there playing.
Yeah.
They love driving the golf cart. Every kid does. I know it's
a
liability.
Yeah.
But, I had about 10 kids out there, went for pizza afterward. And it's just, I think
awesome.
half the battle is just getting them out of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
Even if it's for 4 or 5 hours a day.
So if there are some folks that are foster parents, because I think people will look up, podcasts and anything to do with foster care. So we probably got a lot of foster care parents listening to this. How can they get involved with some of these things and get their kids out of the house? Because I bet parents are, they're probably working jobs, and it's hard for them to get activities for their kids. How can they get involved?
Well, I'll tell you, one group that we work with, One More Child, they're down and they're based in Lakeland, and they've got places here in Tampa, and they've got a couple of enrichment centers down. Well, there's it's a compassion center. There's one in Bradenton, and then there's one in Lakeland, and they're building more. But their whole focus, we're actually going to do one. I did forget to mention that we're scheduled to do one on the 26th in about a week down in Bradenton with Basically, it's the group that lives behind the Compassion Center. There's 10 families with about 50 kids.
Yeah.
So, that's a great group to get involved with. So obviously the Guardian Ad Litems, the Sheriff's Ranch, DCF, they're always looking for parents like that. But my favorite so far has been, we did one with the Sheriff's Ranch, and I brought out kids, that have a family, that have a mom and dad. And just to see the interaction, JP, I just stepped back and watched it take life. So anything we're involved with, they can see, there's plenty of opportunity out there. And the Sheriff's Ranch, one thing they're always looking for are house parents, and they're always looking for couples. So, they've got a couple situations, but, I know that there's, that families helping other families. We've had a couple situations like that, but, it's not a hard search to find. So.
Yeah. And your website is fosterguyflorida.com.
Right. Yeah, it's fosterguyfl.com.
Fosterguyfl.com.
That'll be yeah.
So we go to Florida or fosterguyflorida.com, correct?
Fosterguyfl.com.
FL.com to get more information on all of these.
And
programs.
I'm actually looking at some of our partners, Foster Power here is in Tampa. They were started by Bay Area Legal Services. They're actually provide all the information for the kids. Because one of the amazing things, JP, is kids can be educated in the state of Florida here if they're a foster child up until they're 28 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that's something that, people need to reach out and find. The Sheriff's Ranch, of course, one that I know would be near and dear to your heart, the Florida Institute for Child Welfare, which is based out of Florida State.
Okay.
And they connect to the other universities in the state. They're big on the education side. Guardian Ad Litems, of course, One More Child. One More Child is an amazing organization. They actually have what they call foster crews, and we're going to try to put together a golf foster crew.
Mm-hmm.
People that are connected, obviously, to the game, different country clubs, different individuals that can help them just, with meals, with babysitting, just showing them support. And that I'm excited about as well. Cetera is a group I'm on the board. They work with the kids who age out of foster care, which is, kind of where I start to lean towards the teenagers and the kids that age out of foster care. And then Umbrella is the one that I actually have a memorial grant in my mother's name up in New Jersey. We just awarded our 4th annual for that. So that's for high school seniors who are either foster kids or adopted. So there really is a lot of opportunity out there, especially here in Florida. I mean, there's a ton. So,
and if people want to become foster parents, that's just, all these organizations are the same place they can go.
They're connected in some shape or form to do that. Yes, exactly.
All right. So tell me about the events you got coming up. Where are they? And give us the dates as well.
So I'm looking to do parent-child events just to basically support or bring awareness to foster care. So we've got a parent-child this weekend down in Sarasota at Terra Golf and Country Club. Very excited about that. Next week, we do have the One More Child clinic we're going to do on the 26th down in Bradenton. And then I've got 2 coming up in July, clinics with the Florida Sheriff Youth Ranches at their camps, one in Levy County, the other one in Nassau County. And then we have another parent-child that we're doing over in Volusia County at Cypress Head Golf Club. And all this is just to bring awareness with the parent-childs, but the clinics are directly with the kids,
right?
At these different homes and things. And we're building on that. And then August 16th is the first one we'll do at the Guardian Ad Litems here in Tampa, and that'll be at the Eagles Golf Club. So that one we're really trying to, push out and get the kids involved, and we'll get some volunteers involved with that too. So.
Have you got any prodigy stories yet? Any foster kids you found that might be able to get scholarships, playing the golf teams, any of that stuff?
We're getting there. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, I have a favorite. I have a kid that, he actually ended up getting adopted. He's aged out, but there was a kid that he was tough. And I probably shouldn't tell this in public, but
just don't give the name.
I won't give the name, but I basically broke the kid, and I had to because he was tough. I'm talking about probably the most walls or layers that I've ever seen, and this kid was, and he was hurt. He was abused, and just had a really, really ugly situation. But I've taken him out to the golf course, but I think the connection to that I was him. Yeah. Once. really broke the ice.
Yeah.
And I've stayed in touch with them. I've had them stay the weekend a couple Thanksgivings ago.
That's nice.
And again, just if I can and whether it's golf directly or whether it's someone I can connect because of who I know through golf, I can help these kids no matter what.
Yeah.
So that's really the avenue we're going down. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Tom Shea is joining me here once again. The website is fosterguyfl.com if you want to get involved with any of this stuff. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about not only what you've done in foster care, but just in general, how kids are getting. You've done this your entire career, working with kids, not just in foster care, but in all types of kids getting into the game of golf. It's the game has kind of exploded since COVID a little bit, and all types of kids. And we're seeing young amateurs shooting 18 under par at the U.S. Open. How much has golf just exploded among the youth in the past? I'd say 6 years.
Ago, and it probably was before COVID. They said the game was dying.
It was, right?
Listen, I run the U.S. Kids Tampa Tour here. I've only for the last few years have I said, we're global.
Yeah.
Well, we are. We do a European championship. We do a world championship in Pinehurst every end of July, early August. 2,200 kids from 60 countries. So I don't know where they're saying it's dying, but junior golf has exploded.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those, at the height of it at COVID, I was doing 160 to 180 players a tournament.
Damn.
We average 80 to 100, which is normal, to where we had to get, other golf courses. But, the kids have stayed interested and it's definitely growing. So, and again, obviously there was the Tiger effect years ago. You still have, the Rorys of the world and Ricky Fowlers and Scotty Schefflers that are, getting the kids interested, and they seem to be getting better.
Yeah.
Like earlier, the kid out of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on his name, Miles Russell.
Yeah.
That kid, a lefty, and that kid was playing tour events at 14. So, it's just
these kids, they don't have any negative baggage in their head yet.
No, they don't. They really don't. And they love the game. That's probably one of the things I see the most is, I've seen kids burn out, unfortunately, because of the parents and things like that. But again, if the kid loves it, a perfect example at home. My youngest, he was a golfer, still is. My wife wanted me to, say, hey, you need to direct him this way. And I'm like, he's got to love it.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of, he worked at the Eagles for a long time. My favorite part was everybody loved him.
Yeah.
He could play golf with a 5-year-old to an 85-year-old, and they loved my kid.
Yeah.
And because he loved the game and he enjoyed it, and he showed that enjoyment.
Yeah.
And that's, that goes back to what we're talking about here is show them, it really is. It's a game of joy. It's, it could break your heart at the same time, but you know what I'm saying? It's just like, again, this past weekend, West Palm Beach, Palm Beach Par 3, ocean on one side, the Intracoastal on the other. It doesn't get.
You were doing a clinic?
No, this was a parent-child. We had 100 players.
Oh, nice. A tournament.
Yeah. We did. That was really our first event with Foster Guy FL or Florida. But,
that facility they have down there is incredible, right? It's a public facility. They put a bunch of millions into it.
18-hole par 3 course owned by the city.
Yeah.
And just spectacular. That was the word I used. I did my write-up at the end of the event. Spectacular. Because you come off at 12, you go up on 13, and there it is. And it's turquoise. It's gorgeous. I love the Gulf, but I miss the Atlantic Ocean because I grew up on the Atlantic up in New Jersey. But it was perfect. It really was. Hey,
speaking of New Jersey, you're also on the quest to get your mom into the New Jersey Hall of Fame. Tell me about that.
I've been doing that for a while. That came with that. That's funny. I brought my flags here.
Show me.
That started out with the funny thing. It started out with a song. That's the hilarious thing.
You're gonna sing for me?
I think it's on the other chair. Well, here's the big one. Let me see if I can open up the big one. But this started out with, I wrote a song, I sang it myself, and it was horrible. But then I found this guy.
What did it say? Sing Betty.
It says, "Sing Betty Jane to the New Jersey Hall of Fame." So I find this guy. So I did this. April 2nd would have been her birthday. She's been gone almost 20 years, and so April 2nd, 2020, the height of COVID, they told me not to do it. I said I had to do it. So I go on Facebook. I sing, get Betty Jane to the Hall of Fame. My worst karaoke ever. A month later, I find this guy who's an Ohio State University professor.
Yeah.
Dave Powers, great guy. He plays the piano like 3 nights a week on Facebook. He does the song for me, so he elevates it. And I'm trying to get people to sing it. Well, then we had a reschedule of a regional event in Texas. I find this lady at the Austin airport, and I actually paid her to do this, and it was very, very inexpensive. But she came up with a very professional version. It blew me away. It made me cry.
We're going to have to play these on the next podcast.
You definitely will. We definitely will bring that out. And then, so one thing led to another where it's really like we talked earlier. Yes, I'm still trying to do that. Still trying to make that connection. The nominee's in there. She's eligible every year.
Now, is this for the Golf Hall of Fame?
Everybody asks that. No, it's just a general New Jersey Hall of Fame. Bruce Springsteen's in, Bon Jovi, Frank Sinatra.
So it doesn't have to be a golfer or a running back or anything, like that. You just have to any person in New Jersey.
Exactly. Well, here's my favorite, JP. You have to be a New Jersey resident for 3 years.
For 3 years. Okay.
So you know who got in because she lived in New Jersey for 3 years?
Who's
Annie Oakley.
Annie Oakley, that's it?
Annie Oakley was in for 3 years. Yep.
Oh, okay. She's probably in a lot of Hall of Fame.
Tiki Barber's in, and we'll talk about that one on the next podcast too.
So anybody can get into the New Jersey Hall of Fame. It's not just celebrities.
You have to be a resident, basically. They've got the big ones in there. Bon Jovi. They've actually named one of the rest stops after Bon Jovi. I think one's named after.
So if you were going to give a speech for a Hall of Fame for your mom, what would you say?
Oh, now you're going to make me cry, JP.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I do. That's what I do.
They saved my life.
Yeah. Were you their only foster kid?
No, I was. We had 20 plus kids come through the house.
20 plus kids.
My favorite, JP, and we always joke. We had a broken dishwasher, and people are like, "Hey, Vin, how come you don't fix your dishwasher?" Because I have 5 of them, meaning the kids. So we joke that they had kids just to do the chores. Like our favorite was a raking party we'd have every fall. But anyway, we from the time I was 12 to 16, we had 6 babies come through the house. So I knew how to change diapers and all that when I had my own kids, how to hold them, how to feed them, all that. The last baby became my sister, Gwen. So I was adopted, Gwen was adopted. And then we had all these foster kids in between. And my mother had 5 of her own. That was the amazing thing.
Wow. How big was the house?
Wasn't that big, but we didn't know. We didn't know. It was one of those things. It's like, we made it work and it was awesome. But, so I have 7, 5 Sheas and then me and then my sister Gwen. But, I've never looked at it that way, But if I was to give a speech about mom, she loved kids. She was the president of the Monmouth County Foster Parent Association back in New Jersey. She was a big advocate. When she passed, all I wanted were those articles and the letters that she wrote because she pushed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it makes me choke up. But
should choke up.
But she was, and this is where I wish she was here because I do. I feel guilty that, what I've done in golf and as great as it's been and as fun as it's been, I should have been doing this a long time ago. And
everything in its time, my friend.
Exactly. And again, she's responsible for all of this. Because if it wasn't for her, and I can't forget my father either, because it couldn't happen without him. If he, if he didn't want it to,
yeah, absolutely.
So they were great parents. I have one of my older brothers. He's just retired last week. Actually, was a naval aviator and flies for FedEx or flew for FedEx. He's probably the guy that tortured me the most as a kid. In a good way. We laugh about it. Hey, I love telling this story. I think I told it earlier today. They say play golf to your 3 most obnoxious friends. So I had 3 older obnoxious brothers. They would throw stuff at me, so nothing bothers me, JP.
Did they play golf too?
They did. We all grew up as caddies and everything. But again, he likes to joke that sometimes I'm more of a Shea than some of the other Sheas. But and we have my father's sense of humor. But my mother was the star of the thing. So, well,
it's a great family story, and it's a story of giving. It's a story of community. It's a story of love, and we just don't have enough of that anymore. Exactly. And we need more of it. We need a lot of people to step up because there are a lot of couples that can't have kids for whatever reason, being a foster parent is a great way to share your life with a young kid and save his life.
Yeah.
You know, because these kids, you know, you were them, right?
And I think the biggest surprise is, you know, and it may be just, you know, it's maybe the, you know, the scar, so to speak, and that's probably the wrong word, but you know, the thing is, hey, people are surprised when they find that I was 8 and adopted later. You know, they call that special needs now, but you know, everybody wants a baby, but that's not true because there's a lot of great kids out there. Now, I think the biggest thing, JP, and I'm going to go a little negative here, but you know, with what I've been involved with the last 4 or 5 years, I think the biggest shock and surprise in all this is, you know, hey, foster parents have that choice, you know, but people have adopted kids and have returned those kids. That just absolutely drives me insane. How do you do that? You know, how do you do that? You give this kid, you know, because there's a giant process, and I learned a lot about that in terms of, you know, hey, if you wanted to become a foster parent, there's hoops you got to jump through. And then, you know, and then you finally sign those papers, you bring those kids home and you return them. I mean, what is wrong with that? So that's something we've got to get past too. And I get it, you know.
What's the percentage of that?
That's a great question. But it's higher than I thought it was. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, and again, and I've gotten involved with, you know, some groups out there that, and there's a lot of anger in the adoption world, you know. You know, people that are looking for their, and again, I was lucky, you know, I have a birth brother and two blood sisters. I mean, you know, and I knew them, you know, and they, you know, they weren't around for maybe the first few years I was in the foster home, but then, you know, I reconnected with them. That was my mother's worst fear, by the way, is I would go back, you know, to my other family. I'm like, how could I do that? She saved my life.
Yeah.
That was never, ever going to be the case, but I connected to them because I knew them. But again, I know that I was one of the lucky ones. And, you know, I think, you know, people aren't as patient as maybe they used to be. Yeah. You know, and a kid does one little thing and it's like,
you better know going in that it ain't going to be all rainbows and unicorns.
That's the thing. That's, I think, the shock, you know?
Yeah. But
so, you know, we can address that down the road, but definitely there's some great organizations out there. There really are some great people. I mean, there was, just backing up to One More Child, I got a tour of their facilities down in Bradenton, and they've got these great group home settings. And one of them was being refurbished. So I meet a guy. Oh, man, I'm going to draw a blank. I think his last name was Best. What a great name. Guy had 10 kids of his own. Then he adopted kids on top of that.
Wow.
Now, there's a special guy. That guy's, and I have a sainthood list, by the way, JP. My mother's number 1 on it. And there's other people that are on it. But this guy, that was an amazing story.
Yeah.
And there's people that are trying to, you know, take on more, but they can only do so much too.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, if you want to get involved again, it's fosterguyflorida.com. To get involved with all the stuff we're talking about. We got to talk a little bit about just golf, just because we love the game so much. How'd you enjoy the U.S. Open?
U.S. Open.
Now, coming from a professional golfer like yourself and a teacher like yourself, is it get to the point where it's ridiculously hard, and maybe that's not what we're trying to do here? And then, you know, on Sunday, the rain's coming down. We're not even going to let a guy get a break on 15 there with Sam Burns at a little standing water. Well, a lot of standing water.
I haven't talked to any rules officials yet, but
that seemed to be a little bit over the top. If you know what I'm talking about, standing water, normally you would get a drop.
Yeah.
And he asked for 2 separate rulings. As he said.
But I thought about that. The other rules official isn't going to overrule the other rules.
Right, that's true. What'd you think of that?
I thought that he should have got the relief, but that's me. So, and I'm actually dying to talk to my local rules official who helps me with our local tour, just to see what he says, because they can be tough. But that's one reason I do love the U.S. Open, because it is so hard. Yeah, you know, like I think my daughter was asking me, you know, why is the grass so high? I'm like, that's the U.S. Open. Yeah, now, at least it looked green and lush, and I know they had a lot of rain leading up to that, but it should be hard. Like I laugh.
Hard?
I think it should be. I mean, part of my career was before I was married, I used to spend my winters out in Palm Springs, California. Talk about fantasy world. I worked for the Bob Hope Classic. These guys are shooting 25 under. Yeah, and they're crying.
It's a putting contest.
This is hard. Like they didn't play PGA West for years because they thought it was hard.
Too hard.
And they're shooting 25 under. So I love, because guess what? We see the human side. Yeah. That's why I love the Open so much coming up next month. You know, and I've been there. I don't know if you've been overseas or been to Scotland or Europe or whatever.
Played a lot of those British Open
I
courses.
say people all the time, you have to go to get that experience. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, the wind's blowing. I said, so what? You got to learn how to play in those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So I like when it's hard like that.
Yeah.
I really do.
How about that putt to win by JJ Spawn?
Well, that was my son actually called that. And
No way.
We went crazy. He goes, he's going to make it. And, just
No
nonchalantly. And then we went crazy in the living room. That was fun. That was really fun.
Oh, what is it? 10-foot break down a
Yeah,
hill?
I was thinking about it today because
That's
I heard
insane.
I was listening
64 and a half feet.
I was listening to some sports radio on the way here, and they replayed, him talking about the putt and everything. I'm telling you, I think we give him another 100 tries.
No way.
It,
No way.
And that's the beauty of that.
Yeah.
He'll be remembered forever just for that.
That's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
As are you, Tommy. Thank you for telling your story. This is just episode 1. We'll be back with many more. Hit it again.
Yeah, it's on.
It's not coming up. There it is. Okay, cool. Hold on. I'll start right here. 3, 2, and 1. Thank you so much for telling your story. Really appreciate it. We'll be back with episode 2 with more fun and frivolity from the events that you are setting up. Once again, fosterguyflorida.com is the website.
And we have our sponsor, Excite Junior Golf Tour. We'll get them on the next episode. And
Absolutely.
talk more about what they do. And you're making me feel at home in New Jersey, JP, because only people from New Jersey call me Tommy. So thank you.
Tommy, of course, Tommy. Why not? Excite Junior Golf Tour. Thank you guys very much for sponsoring this podcast. We'll talk more about them and what they're up to. Some really cool stuff. So we'll do that as we go along the way. Tommy, thank you. Appreciate your time. And once again, it's fosterguyflorida.com. Fosterguyflorida.com. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, Tommy.
Thanks, JP.